Is everybody excited for half term? Can I have a whoop? Why are people not excited for half term? Are people excited for half term? Yeah, that's more like it. Unfortunately, I'm going to ask you to get back on your feet again. I know sitting on your bums is really, really comfy, but I think it's really good practice to worship standing up. Right. You give life, you are love. You give life. You give life. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath, it's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. We bow our hearts. We bow our hearts. We lift our hands. We turn our eyes to you again. And we surrender to the truth that all we need is found in you. Receive our adoration, Jesus, Lamb of God. Receive our adoration. How wonderful you are. We choose to leave. We choose to leave it all behind and turn our eyes towards the prize, the upward call of God in Christ. You have our hearts, Lord, take our lives. Receive our adoration. overcome. Christ has overcome. It is finished. He has won. Christ has overcome. We're standing strong. Oh, the cross stands. The cross stands above it all, burning bright in this life. The cross towers over it all. Oh, one hope, one deliverer, Savior reigning high above it all. Above it all, the cross stands above it all, burning bright in this light. The cross towers over it all. One hope, one deliverer, Savior reigning high above it all. Above it all. Above it all. Above it all. Above it all.
Yeah. So I'm going to pray for you now. Dear God, I thank you for Theo. I thank you for his commitment to you. I thank you for his bravery, for coming to speak to us tonight. I really pray that you would flow through him and throughout this room, that we would really have your word with us tonight, and that you would really speak to us all. In your precious name I pray. Amen.
Thanks very much. Okay, if someone's near the back, could they get some of the Bibles and distribute them around a bit? So, I'm talking about the cross. I'm talking about this thing over here. Looks like a lowercase t. And I'm going to be talking about what it means, what it represents, why it's so important. So, the problem is with basing this off a passage is there's 4 Gospels to go off: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But I've chosen to base what I'm talking about from Mark. So if you've got a Bible, could you open it to Mark 15, 8 to 32, okay? Oh, I haven't got it either. There you go. Right. Okay. I've got a slightly different translation in my Bible to your one, so it's going to read slightly differently, but bear with, and we'll get to it. Actually, verse 6. And a couple more verses. Sorry, guys, I've got this wrong. At noon, darkness fell across the whole land until 3 o'clock. Then at 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you abandoned me? That was quite a long passage. I'm willing to bet that most of you weren't paying attention for some of that. I actually wasn't. I was just reading it on auto. Most of us will be able to associate the cross with the religion of Christianity, why we're here today. Some of us, hopefully, will be able to link it to Jesus' death and the principles of Christianity. He died for our sins, rose again the third day, yay. But I'm quite also willing to bet that a lot of you haven't really thought about this in depth. A lot of us have been raised in Christian homes, with Christian families, so have I. And so the crucifixion is something we've grown up with rather than something we've really thought about. And that's dangerous, because we're saying the principle of Christianity, what Jesus suffered, is not that important. Good Friday is just counting down the days until chocolate on Sunday, you know? And that's a problem. So let's look at the basic. Crucifixion, being killed on the cross. Crucifixion, it was the painful way to kill someone. The Romans liked it because the Roman society was built on revenge and justice and order. If you were killed on the cross, you were a high-level criminal. Okay, you were revolutionary, a murderer, a rapist. I'm not going to gloss. These were the bad guys, the guys that we would happily put on death row ourselves. They designed the method of killing on the cross because it was painful. Because their way of thinking was, right, you've caused this much pain on society, so we're going to cause this much pain on you. Eye for eye. And so already what this means is Jesus was killed in a way that despicable criminals were. And that, we call him the only perfect person ever. But how did this happen? Why did he go from being the Son of God to killed as though he was a murderer? I talk about murderers, I talk about revolutionaries. There's this man called Barabbas who pops up. And this is all about Jesus so far. And then this guy breaks the flow, Barabbas. Who is he? We think he's a murderer, we think he's a revolutionary. We think he's a guy who's committed a lot of stupid stuff, he's hurt a lot of people. He was going to be put to death. No one would argue that he didn't deserve punishment. And in a weird twist, in an illegal ceremony meant to celebrate Passover, the Bible, in this extract, Pilate describes it as being some sort of ceremony meant to represent this Jewish festival. But that wasn't the case. There is no record of this ever happening before, on previous Passovers, or again on other Passovers. It's quite likely the Pharisees, the religious leaders, just made this up so that they could push Jesus through and get him executed. And so we have Jesus, this perfect man here, this man who'd only healed, who'd only saved, encouraged, helped, supported, loved. The entire Bible is packed, the New Testament is packed with stories of the great things he's done. And then over here we've got Barabbas, this evil man. If you want to compare him to Hitler or Stalin, go ahead, I won't stop you. He was that level of evil. And Pilate didn't want to take responsibility for making the wrong decision. So he asked the crowd, who do you want me to kill? And the crowd chose Barabbas. You know that. You've read in the extract. The crowd chose to let this evil man go. And they chose to kill this perfect man. Yeah. Barabbas. There's no evidence that Barabbas ever thanked Jesus for this. Just strolled off to his thug friends. Yeah. No, cheers, Jesus. Thanks for that one. Or, I owe your family. I'll look after them after you're gone. I'm saved. I'm going to go back to being a criminal now. Jesus was already saving lives when he died on the cross. And a lot of us as Christians will know that that is what Jesus was meant to come down and be crucified for, to save lives. Even the most evil people. The first life that Jesus saved was Barabbas. Even though he showed no remorse. We don't know that he ever became a follower of Jesus. He ever adopted Christian teachings. But Jesus was like, no, this guy, I'm going to save him anyway. And when, in this passage, did Jesus protest? When did Jesus call for his lawyer? When did Jesus call for someone to come and defend him? When did he whine or moan or cry out for help? I want you to think back to the last time you had an argument with your parents. For some of you it might be very recent, for some of you it might be a while back. Like a full, proper having to go with your parents, probably arguing over schoolwork or curfew or the amount of stuff you do with your friends. Mine was over exam revision a while back. I can kind of see where they're coming from now. I want you to think back to that. Because Jesus knows what that's like. Because just before this extract, Jesus was begging to God not to be killed. He was on his knees. He was saying, God, Father, please, don't kill me. Don't inflict this punishment on me. He knew how painful it was going to be. He was crying out to God because he wanted saving from this punishment. But God was like, no, I love you, but you've got to die. You've got to save these people. And I'm pretty sure that you weren't inevitably, when you eventually lost the argument with your parents, or the last time you lost an argument with your parents, you didn't accept that happily. You stropped about it, you sulked, perhaps you didn't do the work that they asked you to do very well, perhaps you left coming home till the last minute. Imagine it like a piece of homework that your parents are insisting you do, even though you know your teacher's not going to mark it, whatever. Okay? Jesus concedes the argument. He says, fine, you're right, fine. And then from then on, he didn't protest. He didn't stop or sulk. He's then committed to doing the work to the best possible ability, because the only option is that he gets full marks on this piece of homework, on this test. Okay? Why? We're going to come back to that later. He's committed. He knows it's all or nothing here. Okay? Again, we've looked in that passage at what Jesus had to experience, both on the cross and in the run-up. I want to reinforce that. It talked about an entire regiment of soldiers coming out to beat him up. That is anywhere between 500 and 600 soldiers. And these aren't the well-drilled, moral, strong legions of Rome. These are quite lazy auxiliary soldiers. Auxiliary soldiers, second-class citizens forced into the army from around the empire, from Germany, from North Africa, from Israel. Sent to Israel probably as a punishment posting. There was very little fighting going on there. It was a backwater, it was miserable. So they were bored, they were poorly trained. They had no issue with beating up this man they just thought was a convicted criminal. So they were beating him up. They were beating up the Son of God, this perfect man. Kicking him, lashing at him with a whip, a lead whip. Lead is toxic. Highly, highly toxic. That gets in your bloodstream. You're a goner. That was supposed to be an actual click. I can't click, so I guess. If that's in his bloodstream, he was a goner. And so they were already killing him. They brought this guy to within an inch of his life. Just enough so that he could be killed and feel the pain. Put a crown of thorns on his head, mocking the fact that he called himself the Son of God, the King of the Jews. And these weren't like the little thorns that you get on the holly bushes at Christmas. These are like the big thorns on these African plants to deter predators from eating, the flowers or whatever on that tree. Through there, where you've got an artery, where you've got quite a few veins, quite a bit of bone, and that'll hold you up all right, suspended on the nails. And I mentioned having a loincloth covering his private area. Yeah, why would the Romans waste even a bit of cloth on a criminal, on a bad man? He would have been naked up there. And if we think back to the very start of the Bible, when Adam and Eve eat the apple and sin enters the world, one of the first things they feel ashamed of is their nakedness. Full circle. Jesus is back, stripped of everything. Back to the most degrading thing that we can think of humans being put through. There are 3 ways that crucifixion will kill you. Blood loss, major organ failure, and mental and physical. I'm going to have some water. Thanks. Mental and physical exhaustion. Blood loss, sweating blood, nail through the arteries, check. Mental and physical exhaustion, got it. He'd been beaten up by 500 Roman soldiers. He'd had to drag his cross up a hill, and now he's being jeered at by the people who cheered him into Jerusalem about a week ago. Check. Major organ failure. I mentioned blood sweat. His heart was under so much pressure, it was beating itself out of existence. That's an interesting fact. That's one of the ways you die. Your heart simply can't beat anymore, so it just... and that's why smaller animals have a shorter lifespan than humans, because they've got a smaller body. Talk to me afterwards about that. It's fascinating. But Jesus was slowly dying on all counts. He'd been through so much more than the average human should have to go through. And so here he was, naked, on a cross, looking down onto Jerusalem, the city that had been called God's holy city again and again and again through the Bible. The city that humiliated him, stripped him of everything he had. They were gambling for his cloak, the one possession he had. He had no property, he had no books, he had no nothing, no furniture. I don't know why he'd have furniture. But the one piece of possession he had was his cloak. And they weren't even giving it away to someone who needed it. It was just chance of the dice. And in all the things he was suffering, that was, small though it may it seem, that would still have been a bit of pain for him. Then they offered him wine mixed with myrrh. Really obvious question. What can people tell me about myrrh? Where's myrrh mentioned in the Bible? Near the start of the Gospels. When he was born. Exactly. The wise men came offering myrrh. And it's a weird present to give a baby, because myrrh is a poison you give to someone who is dying. And as a baby, you can see the contrast there, can't you? And Jesus refused it. But why would he refuse it? Why would he refuse something that would numb the pain and kill him quicker? Because he can't take any shortcuts. As I mentioned, that piece of homework, metaphorical homework he had to do, he had to get full marks. If he'd taken a shortcut, if he'd cheated, if he'd copied it from Wikipedia, nothing. He couldn't do anything that would cut corners of the full sacrifice. He couldn't deprive himself of that agonizing life any more than was natural. He could not. He knew he couldn't. He was in unimaginable pain. The word excruciating comes from crucifixion. There's no other word to describe it. They invented this word to describe the pain of being crucified. Excruciating. He was in excruciating pain. And he denied the one thing that could have saved him. Because he knew that if he took that poison, the whole sacrifice would be nothing, null and void. And then he cried out to God, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? This man, closer to God than any human had ever been or any human ever will be. This man who was more in touch with the Holy Spirit than any of us can ever dream of being. He could not feel God. He could not sense his Father. He could not feel his presence. Just as we can't feel God sometimes, just as we despair that there could be a loving God, just as we deny his existence because so much wrong has happened to us, even at this last moment, Jesus himself cannot believe that there is a God. God has abandoned him, he cries. And with that, he dies. He's broken, and his body laid to a tomb as the sky goes dark at this injustice. And the reason I've listed all this stuff is because we talk about Jesus' death being a sacrifice. Every other song we sing has the word cross in it, or crown of thorns, or something relating to his death. But why do you have to die on a cross? Why couldn't he have been beheaded? Why couldn't he have been, I don't know, like cheese grated to death? All the ways you can kill someone. Yeah. Why did he have to die in crucifixion? I know I'm not very good at maths. I know a lot of you perhaps aren't as skilled at maths as you would want to be, but I want you to imagine a very, very simple sum. 1 minus 1 equals 0, okay? Just get that in your mind. It's basic maths fact. 1 minus 1 equals 0, okay? I also want you to imagine that 0 is the amount of sin that God has done. 0, nothing. God is perfect. Totally perfect. He had never sinned in his life, okay? The first one, that is the amount of sin, the value of sin we have done. 1, we have sinned. We have lied, we have stolen, we have hopefully not murdered, but, that's something you need to talk about if you have. We have murdered, we have hurt people, we have caused pain, we have caused suffering. Take the minus 1 out of the sum. 1 equals 0, okay? Our sin, our suffering, 1, does not equal God's perfection. That doesn't work. We cannot meet with God. We cannot go to heaven when we die because what we are doesn't match up with what God is. And to Jesus, that is a horrible, terrible thing. And Jesus wants to do something about that. And so he says, God, how can I make this right? And God told him he needs to make a sacrifice. Just as the Israelites used to do to God when they'd done something wrong. They would kill their finest animal to make up for their sin. And so Jesus lived a human life. He got sick, he got tired, he got hungry. He probably got bored when listening to people preach. He was human, okay? And he knew at the end of it he would have to die. But how to match the sin we've done? Jesus had to endure the pain, the suffering, the hurt, the damage equal to the amount of sin we've done. A balanced sacrifice. Just as the Israelites gave up their finest animal to repent for the sin, the larger the sin, the better the animal. Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice. That's such a cliche, but it's so true. He was -1. His sacrifice, every time we sin, every time we hurt people, every time we do wrong, Jesus' sacrifice takes that away. He makes up for it. The amount of pain he endured, the excruciating pain he endured, when he was abandoned, cold, falsely accused, humiliated, whipped, cursed at, spat on, that is equal to the sin that we do. 1 minus 1 equals 0. And so Jesus balances out our sin. Okay? I hope that wasn't too advanced for you guys. As Eleanor put it last month, it's brilliantly simple. We sin. Jesus balanced out that sin by dying for us. We meet with God. Bang, done, dusted. I can't click again. Okay? Because the alternative is when the value of our sin doesn't match up with God. What happens then? It's imperfect. It's faulty. We cannot match God. So we go to a place called hell. A place that, even in Halloween, seems like quite a chill place. A place that we occasionally talk about when we're swearing, why the hell did you do that? What the hell was that for? If heaven is where God is, and there is no sin in heaven, and hell is where God isn't, and I'm going to let you think the rest of that. Hell is everything Jesus was experiencing in that last moment on the cross. Just as he felt God had abandoned him. Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you abandoned me? That moment and more was what hell is like for us. No God, no love, no joy, no pity, no mercy, no thanks, no kindness. For eternity. You sat through me preaching for a good 20 minutes. Like, imagine that going on for eternity. That's painful. And Jesus was like, I don't want them to go through this. I don't want these brilliant people who are flawed, who are corrupt, but brilliant, to endure that. So Jesus died in the most painful way possible. He didn't moan. He didn't curse. He didn't call for his lawyer. He didn't protest. Because he loves us. Because the only way he can balance out our sin is by doing that. One last thing. I want you to get your phones out. Yeah, I know some of you are already there. Well, recently I was talking to Sam Pue, and I was talking to him about what I was going to say today. And he was like, well, you should check out this protein, man. Yeah, it's in our bodies. And I was like, okay, protein, sure. And he was like, yeah. Basically, well, I'll get you a video. And he showed me a video. And I was like, oh, for goodness sake. And what this protein does is it binds the cells in our body to our tissue, to our stomach, to our muscles. It makes sure that we can move, we can breathe, we can live, we can eat. And I was like, oh, yeah. Yeah, this is actually really cool. This is really important. I want you to get up Google Images on your phone or Safari Images, whatever. When you open the browser, even if you think you haven't got enough data, I would like you to do this just now. I want you to type in laminin. Make sure it's Google Images. Laminin. Laminin. Like lamb without the B and in. Yeah, images. It's taking a while.
Got it. Protein
Laminin.
It's a T.
Huh?
It's a T.
Have people got it up at all? What's, yeah. Alec, what was that?
It's a cross.
You can interpret it in one of two ways. It's a T, a lowercase t, or it's a cross. Remember what I said about it literally holding us together so we can breathe and eat and live? It's making sure that our body works properly. Laminin and the cross, by extension, literally make sure we can live. I think we're going to... So, maybe that's a message to stick with. The cross is that important to us. That is what the cross means. It gives us life, gives us hope, it gives us God. And that is the end of what I have got to say. I think we're going to have a song, and then we're going to have communion, and we'll talk about it. Yeah.
Feel free to stand and sing, or if you'd like to just sit and listen to the words, you're more than welcome. When I survey, when I survey the wondrous cross on which the Prince of Glory died, my riches gain. I count the love and for contempt on all my pride. See from his head, his hands, his feet, sorrow and love flow mingled down. Did it such love and sorrow meet, all thorns compose, so rich a crown, will the whole realm of nature mine, that were an all, bring far too small, love so amazing, so divine, demands my soul, my life, my all. And I thank you for the cross.
And I thank you for the cross. I thank you for the cross. I thank you for the cross, my Lord. And I thank you for the cross. I thank you for the cross. I thank you for the cross, my Lord. I love you. And I love you for the cross. I love you for the cross. I love you for the cross, my Lord. I thank you. I thank you for the cross. I thank you for the cross. I thank you for the cross, my Lord. When I survey the wondrous cross.
Let us think past its sweetness, and let us think about the pain that you went through for us. And let us be thankful and not take that for granted. In your name, amen. We're going to end with some songs. The first one's more reflective. So take your time, and then we're going to really pump it up at the end, because even though this cross was really painful, and it was like ultimately the worst thing that any human could ever go through, it was so good, and it was so that we could be in a relationship with our Father. So do stand if you want to. All these pieces.
All these pieces, broken and scattered, in mercy gathered, mended and whole, empty-handed, but not forsaken. I've been set free. I've been set free. Amazing grace.
take our failure.
You take our failure, you take our weakness, you set your treasure in jars of clay. So take this heart, Lord, I'll be your vessel, the world to see your life in me. Oh, amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Oh, I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see it now. Oh, I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life. No, I can see you now. Oh, I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Oh, I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see you now. Oh, I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life. Cast my mind to Calvary, where Jesus bled and died for me. I see his wounds, his hands, his feet, my Savior on that cursed tree. His body bound and drenched in tears, they laid him down in Joseph's tomb, the entrance sealed by heavy stone. Messiah still and all alone. praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh Lord our God.
He shall return.
He shall return in robes of white. The blazing sun shall pierce the night, and I will rise among the saints, my gaze transfixed on Jesus' face. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh Lord our God. We praise his name. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh Lord our God. Oh Lord our God. Oh Lord our God. The moon and stars they fell, the morning sun was dead, the Savior of the world was fallen. His body on the cross, his blood poured out for us, the weight of every curse upon him.
One final breath.
One final breath he gave as heaven looks away. The Son of God was laid in darkness. A battle in the grave, the war on death was waged. The power of hell forever broken. The ground began to shake, the stone was rolled away. His perfect love could not be overcome. Now death, where is your sting?
died and you went to hell so that we don't have to. But that wasn't the end. You didn't stay there. You rose. You conquered death so that we could have life. You're risen and you forever will be. And I realised when we were singing those, like, it was really high, like, pumped up at the end, and then it, like, dropped at the beginning of the next song. And, like, when you go through life, you're going to go through highs and lows, and Christianity isn't easy, but Jesus remains through all of that, and he's died and he's with you through everything. So if you want to chat about anything that's, like, been stirred in your heart tonight, Theo, me, Phil, or anyone else you're comfortable with talking to, and Roz, who's just walked back in, we're happy to chat. But yeah, this is like the official end to the service. We're going to chill, we're going to play some games, we're going to have the notices just before the end. So yeah, thank you, Jesus.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Awesome. So we've got a couple notices coming up. So we've got Sellout coming up this half term. Can we get a cheer for that? Can we do better? That was pathetic. Okay. So on the 25th to the 26th, this half term, we've got our Sellout, which I'm excited to go to. And I know quite a few other people that are going. We've also got Yak starting on the 5th of November, which will be exciting as well. Can we get a cheer for that? That was a bit better. Oh, it's after Sunday on 6 p.m. where, as a youth, we're going to go meet up in the Wycliffe room and play some games and talk more about God. And yeah. Yeah, and there's food. So come along. We've also got a crossover event with the students and the youth. The dates are yet to be confirmed, but we're thinking of doing a quiz night or something so we can be more united with our church. Yeah, definitely. We've got Next Level also coming up on the 17th of November, which I'm really excited about going to. I went last year and the year before that, and they've both been amazing. Can we get a bigger cheer for that? There we go. We're getting better. I don't know how to explain it. It's a big church event where all the churches in Reading come together to celebrate God, which is exciting. We've also got some feedback sheets at the back. I think they're in a teapot, I believe, on that table there. So we'd really appreciate it if you put down what you enjoyed about Res and what maybe some things we can improve on, so we can make Res the best for you guys and to apply to all of our needs so we can get the most of our sessions to get closer to God. And one last notice, we're looking for a Res photographer. So if anyone here is interested in photography or just getting memories of Res, could you please speak to Seth or Theo? And yeah, they'd be more than happy to get you on board with that. Thank you guys, and yeah, have a nice rest of your evening.
So chill, mingle, and we'll play a game in about 10 minutes.